Sometimes I can't seem to get near enough to you, and it's wrong that I'm afraid to say what I wanna say, 'cause you feel the same way, don't you? And so it is, and it's not. On Monday we took a walk. God, I had to look at you, you with pennies in your shoes. And I always knew that someday you would come. I just wanna be the only one. I just wanna be the only one for you. I never thought I'd feel this bad, that I'm not enough a man, and I don't know what to do, 'cause I'm so in love with you. I know the spreads evenly as the scales tip on me. I can't even say your name now. No. I just wanna be the only one. Yeah, I just wanna be the only one. Yeah, I just wanna be the only, and I just wanna be the only, and I just wanna be the only one.
Hi, I'm Wendy Nesbitt, and I'm a photographer in Victoria, BC, Canada. I'm not really sure how I chose photography, but I remember when I was in high school, back in the 80s, I had a next door neighbor who was selling a camera, and it was a little film Minolta camera, and I was interested in it. And my dad used to be the shutterbug in the family, and he would take pictures of all our trips and everything. I just picked it up. I got some film when I had got a puppy recently, and then I started taking pictures of her, Mickey. I guess, I joined the photo club at school, and I started doing photos for our annual here with my high school, and it just kind of kept going. And in those days it was film, so I would spend lots of hours in the dark room at the school. When I was in high school, I joined the photo club. I started taking pictures around the school, and I would play field hockey, but then I had an injury, so I couldn't play, which meant I just sort of had more time to take pictures. In those days, I was in the dark room a lot because it was film development, so that's how I learned photography. And it just sort of evolved from there. I got a puppy that year, little 8-week-old dog named Mickey, and I started taking pictures of her, and it just sort of evolved from there. And I just started taking pictures of anything and everything. And it was really interesting to just do it. There was like fat in a frying pan. One evening there was, or my dog, or leaves, a lot of black and white, because I was only processing black and white film. And then I continued a little bit after school, but it was just for myself. I never really I had aspirations to be a photojournalist in high school, but I took a year off, and that year it's almost, I don't know, 30 years off before I actually became a published photojournalist. So that was exciting. I would say I'm also I'm a Pisces, and I don't know how many people sort of follow their astrological signs, but I am a conglomeration of a lot of different signs, and I think that's reflected in my work, because I am all over the place. And I understand that. And I try and think that, like, why am I taking photographs of my dolls and their clothes? Why am I taking photos of, rescue dogs? Why am I spending so much time on certain things? But it's all just by feeling. It's all just things that I'm interested in. It's passion, it's memories, and it's just part of who I am. I'm an adoptee. So for as long as I can remember, I knew I was adopted. I was about 3 weeks old. And I think that's had a big part to play in my art and my subjects. And it goes by a feeling. I feel like it's really informed a lot of my rescue dog photography. But it's also, I have this sort of kinship with things that are discarded. So I don't like to let things go very easily. The sense that I get, the feeling I get, like when I have a friend who we've been friends since we were 4 years old. And our first play date was salt and pepper shakers because we didn't really have a lot of toys to play with. They just moved in across the street. And a couple of years ago, she actually came over and we got all our Barbie stuff together and we got our Barbie clothes out. And that's sort of what prompted that my play, my doll clothes on display. I had favorite clothes. I just loved dressing up my Barbies. I named them. Interestingly, I named them Chris and Jill were my 2 favorite Barbie names when I was growing up. And that turns out to be my biological mom and my biological half sister's names. And I didn't know that. So there's all these weavings between the things from my childhood and things that I've learned later in life. And I just kind of go with what I'm feeling. I don't have an end goal. I can't think that there was a specific, a light switch that went on, but I always knew I was adopted. So I always knew that I was also part of some other people biologically than my parents and my brother. But I think I met my biological mother and some of my half siblings when I was 19. And we've had a relationship ever since, and that's fantastic. And it was interesting. It could be around that time, maybe a bit later, where I could start to see myself in these people, right? So nature, nurture, how did my parents raise me and what kind of person am I to what would I have been? But I also saw a lot of physical characteristics that were similar to my biological family, the way we spoke, our voices, hand gestures, laughs, things like that. I came across doing art just on my own because I didn't get I didn't get that kind of go forth and do art, Wendy, because it was such an anomaly. It was, they knew getting a job, going to work, coming home, raising your family, doing the best you can. And we had a great life, but it was up to me to explore myself and the artistic side of me, the creative side, the questioning side. Then it was last year that I actually was able to connect with my biological father's, some of his relatives. He's passed away, but so it's given me another piece of myself where I'm able to sort of see who those biological relatives are, and it's really interesting. And I know I've got a book in the works. I've been journaling about it ever since as long as I can remember, so that's in the works as well.
You have done a project called Abandoned Places.
Oh, right. Go
Is
ahead.
this in the Victoria? And how did you decide to do this project?
because my friend who has the secondhand shop was going to go up and see if there was any things that she could get from my friend who had a big piece of property with lots of things left over from a previous owner. With the abandoned places project, what happened is we went to a place that was a friend's house who was about an hour outside of Victoria, and she had just purchased a property where the fellow, I think, that had lived there, he just passed away, and it took some time before he was found. So everything was just left. It was a bit of a, you know, like just as it was, as he had been living. And then over time, there were some vandals that had, you know, showed up and messed things up, and, you know, floors rot away and whatnot. But it felt like such a time capsule. Like it felt like there's the end of someone's life, and then here's nature taking over almost, because, you know, even though the vandals had maybe broken windows and wrecked some things, there was things that were starting to come back in, you know, whether it was mold or whether it was branches and the outside, and it was all sort of making its way back into the house, and things that were in the house were starting to decay a little bit and wear down. And it's a really interesting look into the way somebody lived as well. The things they hung on to, there was an old piano that was in there, and an old sofa, and you think back to the things that happened in that house, and the life of the person, because there was a bedroom that still had clothes hanging in the closet, you know, presumably a deceased wife or something. And it's very powerful to be in those sorts of places, at least for me.
There is a quality to your pictures, the contrasts, the way you position the camera, the angles. How do you choose your angles?
Although I took photography in high school, and I did do some night classes along the way, I'm mostly self-taught. And I honestly just go by, I'm looking, I see it, you know, I lift up the camera and I want to take that photo, and then sometimes I end up doing some light edits, but it's more of a feeling, and there's a feeling of me wanting to preserve that somehow. I want to give space somehow, you know, to this visual, and it's my eyes are always going. You know, they're always on, and it's sometimes hard for me to sort of calm that and relax that a little bit, which I'm working on. It's just a feeling, it's a sight, I'm looking right now towards some hanging beads that I have in my doorway here, and I'm thinking, I don't know if you can see those, and I'm photographing those and what angle I would take, and if I would stand up or if I would go lower. And it's a constant motion of my mind to try and figure these things out, and then just do it. And I sometimes feel like I want to, it's evident in a lot of my pet photography, is that I will do two photographs that are very similar with one minor little difference between them. There might be a slight different crop, there might be a slight different color, you know. In some of the dogs, there's eyes looking straight or they're looking sideways. It's just, as I go through the editing process, I start to really get a feel for how I want to present these, and sometimes I end up going back and redoing them too. So it's all what's kind of going on inside.
You also have gone beyond your city, your town. You photographed rural British Columbia all the way to Saskatchewan.
My sister-in-law lives on a rural farm in Saskatchewan, just outside of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And so we would make an annual road trip out there, my husband and whatever dogs we had in tow at the time. And, you know, when you're the passenger of a car, I'm always just thinking about what I'm seeing and taking in those visuals. And I always want to preserve them. And I think some of it has to do with, I don't have the greatest memory. So it's almost like a literal photographic memory, is the way it works. And I wanted to, at first it was novel. I hadn't really driven out to Saskatchewan before. So that my first trip was around 2001. And then I wanted to document it. I wanted to show where we stopped, what we did, what was happening, share it with the family. And then there's so many beautiful things. I don't know if you've ever done the trip. You leave where I'm in Victoria, we have to take a ferry that goes to the mainland of British Columbia. And then from there, we just start driving, and you go through the mountains and go through like Banff or Jasper, and it's just beautiful, lush, mountainous. And then you leave that and you go into Alberta, and it's completely different terrain. And then as you leave, sort of go through Alberta and leave that, and you hit Saskatchewan, it's just flat, and it's, you know, the oceans of fields is what they are. And it's so different, yet it's so beautiful. And I think it all merits some sort of, I think it merits the capturing of it and saving it, because it's going to change, right? It's all going to change. And I've noticed that just over 3 years of driving out there in a row, how some things change and cities grow up and there's more people and more cars, and it's saving it for me. It's sharing it with family. It's a place and a time, and I want to preserve that.
And I noticed that you love horses.
Yeah, well, so on the farm, they have 4 horses, and I actually was quite nervous of horses up until I started going out there, and they were just big. I'm a dog person. I can hang out with any dog. I'm not afraid of dogs, but horses were another creature, and as much as I wanted to love them, they made me nervous. So one of the best feelings I had was maybe a few years ago on our trip, where I got to go into the field where the horses get to hang out in pasture, and they all just sort of come around you and come and, you know, bonk you with your nose and with their noses, and yet they're so gentle, you know, they're just beautiful beings. And as I got to understand more about them, I became more comfortable, and I could go in and I could photograph them, and I got to photograph some human friends with their horses out there, and just learn more about them. And my sister-in-law does equine assisted learning, which is using horses to help people communicate. And I got to partake in one of those classes. So the horses sort of teach you how to communicate and think about what you're thinking of. They're just such gentle, beautiful giants, and I don't even need to ride them. I just want to photograph them, and that's my way of kind of showing some love to them. But they're majestic.
It's interesting that you developed this passion for smaller animals like dogs, and then these large animals, horses, with completely different personalities.
I love all animals, to be honest. I'm a huge animal lover, and I don't eat them anymore. I just want to respect them and learn about them and kind of help educate in a way, maybe through photography, that they are part of our world, and they deserve the respect and a place on this earth, just as we humans do. So it's with dogs, I think they were so much more accessible to me growing up living in the city. But being in Saskatchewan provided the opportunity to learn more about horses. And I mean, I got to hang out with buffalo for a short time too, and they're a completely different creature altogether. And they were, you don't get too close to them. But I think it's just, it all stems from a place, it comes from a place of caring and respect and wanting to sort of show that their place is in this world as well. I've had hamsters too. We rescued some hamsters over the years. I'm allergic to cats, so I don't get too close to the cats generally, but I'm still learning about them and respect them completely.
You've done pictures of all types of dogs. How did you start this series of the dogs?
So for the where I work with dogs, I actually, I got my dog Mickey when I was 18, 17, 18. And she was I just saw the ad in the newspaper, and you know, I was able to help my parents help me, get the $75 together to buy her. And we went and picked her up. And I mean, that was a different place and a different time for sure. And I mean, I tried to get a puppy through our local shelter, but they just never had any puppies, and I wanted a puppy so bad. And she lived till she was about 15, and I love that dog so much. She was crazy, and she was a real learning experience in my life. And when my husband and I got our house, we thought we were going to get a dog for sure. We thought we'd get a bigger dog, actually. And I was producing a television show at the time, a local morning show where we had guests from all over town. And one of them was our local SPCA, and they brought in dogs each week for Furry Friday. And one week they brought in this little Shih Tzu dog along with a little lab puppy, I guess. And everyone just gushed over this lab puppy. I mean, it just was happy and loose and just la la la. And no one was really paying attention to this little, 3-year-old dog. And I crouched down and saw her, and she came right over and just kind of laid down and was, rub my belly. And I did. And her name was Susie, and we adopted her that day, and she was at our house that night. And I remember when I picked her up from her foster home, I had this feeling of, I'm going to do everything I can for this dog. Like, you're going to be okay. She was buckled in the passenger seat of my car, and I had my hand on her, and I was like, I know that you've lost your home. I know that you don't know what's happening, but I'm going to do everything I can to make the rest of your life great as I can. And I knew that feeling of being in flux. I knew that feeling of, somehow when I was little, I had 3 weeks of my life that I don't know where I lived, my first 3 weeks. So there's that question in my life. And I was really relating it to her, and her not knowing where she's going or who I am. And that was a pivotal moment for what I was going to do. And I decided at that point I was going to do all I could to help dogs like her in those situations and help spread the word about adopting animals, and just kind of marrying that experience of animal adoption and being an adoptee myself. And Susie passed away about 9 years ago now. She lived a great life, and she was such a fantastic little companion and really helped me learn more. And she was an ambassador. And just kind of kept me going. And that that was 2005.
Then 2010 came, and you also learned about the sled dog experiences.
Yes. So the Olympics were in Vancouver in 2010, and Whistler is just, a short drive, and there was a lot of events up in Whistler, which is a resort town. And so there were sled dog excursions, and after the Olympics, of course, it slowed down, right? They had lots of sled dogs to help all the people that were there visiting for the Olympics. But then when they were over, so it was actually in 2011 that we learned what had happened, and I was a volunteer at our local shelter. And at first it was just sort of, we'd heard that there had been a cull of excess dogs, and after more news came out, it became evident that it was a massacre, and it was awful. And it really opened my eyes, because we all know about dog sledding, and we see the pretty pictures, but there was a lot more to the story, specifically here in Whistler. And I knew that my advocacy photography was going to take a different turn. And there were so many myths about, because after the call, there were a lot of dogs that the operation was going to shut down, and all the remaining dogs needed homes. But a lot of people were saying that the dogs were feral and they would never be adoptable and they could never live in homes. And we were doing a disservice to these dogs by making them live in a house, because all the dogs lived outside 24/7. And then in March 2012, the first dogs actually made it into our local shelter, and I met my first former sled dogs, and it was a revelation. They were nothing like what I thought. They were small. A lot of them, they weren't the big fluffy huskies. And if you take a look at some of the photos in my project, I Was a Sled Dog, you will see the diversity in the breed. And it led to me going off on a decade-long project of following the post-adoption lives of a lot of these former Whistler sled dogs. And they were beautiful. They were friendly. They napped. There was definitely a learning curve for a lot of them, but they also could just, what you learned where they lived, you were able to, it would help inform you how they could live within your home and what sort of things need to be worked on. And it created a really close-knit community here in Victoria, of retired sled dog adopters, which this Facebook group goes to this day, and there's always new sled dogs when they're being adopted. The people join the group, and it's such a wealth of information and just helps people along that journey. And it's a fantastic outcome, of what's happened, because we can't change what happened, but we can certainly work towards helping the dogs that are still having to be rehomed, and advocate. And I think photography is a perfect medium for that. And I am doing it because, I share pictures honestly. I share the details that I can share, openly. And my photographs are, they show the good and the bad, right? I'm not sugarcoating it, but I'm also showing that they deserve a place. They don't deserve to be shot when they're no longer useful.
Photographing dogs is different than photographing people. They are often in motion. They are curious. What are you doing? How do you manage to get them to sit so you can take the pictures?
I love photographing dogs, and I would choose photographing dogs over over humans, if I had the choice, because the dogs, like, they, you know, they're not going to look at their picture afterwards and go, "Oh, I don't like my smile in that picture." And, you know, it's such a different experience. As long as, honestly, like with all the hundreds of dogs in situations I've photographed, because I've photographed them in shelters, while they're in their kennels, while they're in flux, while they're, to in my studio where they're, you know, there could be a super well-behaved, well-trained, you know, little dog who's just going to sit and do whatever you want it to. And that's all great too. Happy-go-lucky. So it all depends on the dog. I really sort of like take a beat to understand what's going on with this dog. Like, if it's super stressed at being in my studio, then I take a different approach. We may sit and chat with the, you know, the humans may chat while the dog just gets to sniff around and relax. And it's not always for me about sitting and getting that perfect pose, you know. If they want to do that, excellent. But if they're more into playing, or if they're more into just napping, if they're more into just sitting with their human, I want to make that work, and I want to do it as stress-free as possible and make this a good experience, and for all parties, you know. Sometimes the pictures are super blurry, you know, but I think they're not always technically beautiful and perfect because, you know, it's a bit dark, or it's too bright here, or they're in motion in a way that some people might not like. But to me, that's the feeling that I'm getting, and I'm trying to translate that, right? Like, it's the feeling I'm getting from that dog, and trying to share what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, how it's communicating with me in that moment.
Behind you, you have the picture of a dog. Is that your dog?
Can I get there?
With the hat.
That one. Yeah, that's Susie. That's my little Susie dog, who passed away. Yeah, yep, that's Susie. She's she's all over the place, really. She shows up in lots of pictures. And yeah, it's also behind there is a load of things from my father-in-law, who recently passed away, who's some of his belongings, who are going to be going out, that are going to go out to Saskatchewan next summer. So I am surrounded literally in my studio with things that are sort of left over and discarded from previous lives, you know.
You wrote 2 or 3 books about the Sleddies.
Mm-hmm.
You've done that
Yeah.
over the past 10 years or so?
So one of the tools I use to help give space is not only through social media. I'm a little hit and miss, but I do keep up my websites pretty consistently. And then I also like to, you know, print things. I want to make sure that it's not just going to exist virtually. I want to eventually print them. So with my sled dogs, I created this. I'll be showing up backwards for you. Meetings with Remarkable Dogs. So this is a 300-page photo book that sort of chronicles. This came out in 2016, so probably about 4 or 5 years of my photographs and following the former Whistler sled dogs. Sorry, that's not a very good way to show it, but that's that book. And I've also, this was my first book that I ever did, which was Home Away from Home. And it was looking at just the animals that came through the shelter, so I could help show up what goes on behind the scenes. Equal opportunity, I make sure there was cats there too. And I've done these like little mini books. This was a dog who gave birth. She was Rosie. She gave birth to a bunch of puppies, and so I just did a book of 100 pictures of her puppies. And I would sell, so all the books that I created, since she was pregnant. I then would sell, and all proceeds would go back to the rescue or shelter which this animal was in the care of. So I don't make any money from any of it. My sled dog books, all the money that I got from that, I then donated back to the rescue that was helping rescue and rehome a number of the sled dogs. So it's a labor of love, absolutely. I don't want to make any money off of the animals that are in flux. So that's sort of a bit of a balance. So I have to sort of watch what I do to try and, earn a living, because being an artist, it's hard to, for me at least, it's hard to sort of think about how I can live off of my art, but I'm still trying to work out that balance. I'm also volunteering with a local bulldog rescue. And so this is a little book that I made for them, just as a little gift. But there's plans in the works for maybe another book or some other printed products to sort of show the little squishy faces. So I do some of that. I really believe in printing, art, and especially with photography, because it's so easy to just let it land on your social media and leave it there. But I feel like it needs to, for me, it really needs to go further than that. I've started a prototype. This is something I'm starting out called Susie's Couch, and named after my dog Susie, and a take on a photograph name by Robert Mapplethorpe. But this is a magazine I'm gonna work on, of just collections of images from my garden, because during COVID I was just kind of doing a lot of stuff in my backyard, and so I just went through and did photographs in there, and just wanted to create a little magazine and see what happened with that.
Wendy, at the beginning, you mentioned that you worked in the darkroom. Did I understand correctly?
Yes. In the photo world, I get the sense there's a lot of, there's the two camps, it's either digital or it's, film. I feel like there's both. And I actually consider myself a lo-fi girl in a hi-fi world, because I feel like I like to keep it simple, but there's an immediacy with the digital world that helps me sort of get my work out, my thoughts out, my feelings out, whatever I want to do, it gets it out faster, right? So, but there's something to be said. And here at my studio, it's like a little cottage. And so we're in one room, and next door here, there's a little kitchen, which I can black off and I can create into a dark room. And I have a little black and white enlarger, and I can then, I can process my film. And I'm not as comfortable processing my film, but it's always a bit of an experiment. And then I can do the printing as well. The process is slower. It's a bit more technical, but I also feel like that there's a room for surprises, which I really love. I like to embrace whoopsies, it's because that's part of life. I did a book of dogs with their eyes closed, because I had so many pictures of dogs doing that that I was like, let's embrace it. How cute is that? So also, when it comes to doing things in the darkroom, like let's embrace it. There may be a little scratch on the negative. It gives certain subjects like a real warmth and depth to them, I think, and it's a completely different look. The only issue I have right now is that there are chemicals that are used, right? And I don't really enjoy using them, and there's no way to dispose of them other than down the drain. So I am looking into there's vegetable processes that are now being used, turmeric, like there's a whole bunch of herbal and plant-based ones that I'm kind of eager to try out. So that should maybe this year, maybe in the summertime.
What are you working on right now?
About 17 different things. Right now I'm working on a final book for my sled dog project. It's not that I'm going to stop following their stories, but I think I need to put a pin in it, because I do have another couple things I want to work on, and they're larger projects, and I'm looking to get grants for that because I'm hoping that I will be able to travel a little bit with that and go visit the people that I need to. And it's actually a music focused project. My husband's a musician, and so I sort of got the idea from talking with him and some of his musician friends. But I'm also working on my adoption project, which is a book and a memoir journal, what have you, of my story. Because everywhere I go, there's people that I know that are either adopted themselves, or they have siblings, or they know someone who's adopted, and it's really interesting to hear their stories, and so those are sort of the three big things right now. But as we were chatting earlier, I have a lot of things, and I think part of my problem is I don't flesh things out maybe as much as I want to or should, but I just got to keep kind of going with what I'm feeling. And I have more toys here at my studio and some more old things, because I do a whole series on vintage kitchen utensils and discarded products. I've got some old wooden rolling pins that I want to turn into something. So I always have something long term, and then I have a few other smaller things that I can leave space for and just putter around and just go through the motions and see what kind of comes up.
You live a very respectful and mindful lifestyle. What would you say your guiding philosophy is?
I want to do things with respect when it comes to photography, or any art for that matter. I want to be aware. I want to I want to give things the time and space that are due to them, and maybe that's a respect piece, and just follow my heart. I think, I recently left my day job, and it was a nice secure job, but it was in an office, and it wasn't really working for me any longer. And I had some things happen this year where I thought I needed to concentrate a little bit on myself, and so I left that job, and now I'm out in the freelance world, but it feels good right now, and I think just sort of listening to myself, and just being true to myself and where my art takes me.
Do you have projects for the beginning of the year?
As far as showing my art, I mean, I'm all for printing things and putting them out in that respect, but putting it out towards other people for them to purchase, I'm very shy and I'm very reserved when it comes to that. I do have a block, and I totally recognize that. I recently had some little postcards printed of some of my photographs, and I still haven't put them out that they're for sale, because I think when it comes to 2023, maybe it's just a matter of me getting beyond my blocks, and that's one of them. I have grand ideas, but it's the execution sometimes for those ideas of how I can go a step beyond to show my work and put it out there. That's tough, like going into fairs and any kind of art exhibitions. I think it's a protective thing probably, but it's if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. And I think that's a really important lesson for myself, is just to just push beyond that. So yeah, hopefully maybe the 2023 New Year's project won't be something tactile. It's just going to be something that's coming from inside and moving beyond some barriers and really just going for the things that I want to go for.
How can people find you? And also, how can they order these books? Because they seem to be sold out.
I will say that I do a lot of my bookmaking through an online service called Blurb. And as nice as the books turn out, they're very pricey. And I don't, they're available through Blurb, but they're quite expensive. And like I'm just selling them at cost right now because I feel bad because between that, any kind of markup, any kind of shipping, it's cost prohibitive for a lot of people. So if they wanted to order anything, they could contact me directly. So you can find me through my website, wendynesbitt.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as Wendy Nesbitt Photo. You can contact me through there. I guess if there was anything you wanted to order, you could contact me directly because I actually prefer to know, like, I'm very connected to my pieces. So anything, I want to make sure that, like, I want to see where things are going directly. Or if you just want to say hi, you can always just drop me a note as well.
Would you be interested in doing customized books?
I love making books. I love it. I love that process. I love sequencing them and editing them and figuring out what's going to go next to what. So I'm all over that. I need to find a way that's just a little bit better pricing. But like when I do photo sessions for people at my studio or outside, wherever I'm doing those sessions, I do actually create a custom, like a monograph of the session. So I supply that in a PDF form. And then if they want to purchase it as a book, I can make that happen as well. So I do custom books for a lot of clients in my dog photography world. And that's super fun. Yeah.
During the pandemic, a lot of people adopted dogs. But
Yes.
after the pandemics, a lot of people abandoned them too. Have you seen something like that in your area?
There's been a lot of reports of that, and I've heard that too. Here where I live, I don't know if it's a huge surge. What there seems to be is a lot of dogs that are considered pandemic puppies that maybe don't have the best socialization skills with other humans in the world and with other dogs. So that's one of the bigger things. The rescues that I volunteer with are just overwhelmed with people surrendering dogs. I mean, a lot of it's financial. We have really high veterinary costs here where I live, and which is great in the sense that we have access to a lot of great care, but it's quite expensive because the cost of living is quite high here. So it's an ongoing thing. I think no matter where you are, I know of rescues in the UK who are dealing with the same thing. People are just, back to work or running out of money. It's a problem everywhere. I just want to contribute to this world in a way that's positive and try to affect change for groups, specifically animals that really don't get a lot of don't get a lot of attention. For me, going forward, I think it's going to be about balance. A lot of the advocacy work I do can be tough. I can put myself in a lot of difficult situations and I can manage that. But I think there also needs to be the balance. And with some of the other things I photograph, I'm photographing dogs who have endured a lot of difficult, horrible things in their lives. But I also want to photograph the clothes my Barbies would wear when I was playing with them when I was little. So it's,
there's something to be said for creating balance in art and in life, and I want to sort of go forward with that, and I don't want to put any constraints on myself with what I should be and what I should share, and make sure I have sort of a cohesive look to things. You know, I'm going to put out there whatever I can, whatever I'm feeling, whatever comes up, because that's who I am as a person.